Often on the reality show, we talk about some of the worst characters on the planet, especially when those are people with an audience, people who are listened to, and that is what's disturbing about this. And we've talked about anti-Israel people of all sorts. We've talked about anti-Israel Jews. Even when it comes to anti-Israel Jews, I know there's great competition in that marketplace of bad ideas, but Gideon Levy is probably the winner of that competition. Gideon Levy is an Israeli Jew who has dedicated his life to the anti-Israel cause. He has lived in Gaza, which, if you're an Israeli Jew and you want to live in Gaza, you need approval from the higher ups. You need they need to know that you're one of them, and you need to give something in exchange for the promise of being the last one, the last Jew standing before they get to you. Anyway, as often is the case with such despicable characters, we wait for Piers Morgan to have them on for a softball interview before we talk about them on this show. This was the case with Gideon Levy. He had a panel. He had a panel as he does a panel of two anti-Israel people, one supposedly pro-Israel. I have to say, as Piers Morgan pro-Israel people go, uh, Alan Dershowitz is better than most. That doesn't mean he's better than most pro-Israel people out there. It just means to be invited on Piers Morgan, you have to be very soft in your pro-Israel approach. Um, yeah, you know what? Okay, I have more to say about that, but I want to quickly go for some quick comments from our panel about Gideon Levy before we start watching some of the clips from that show. Nathan, you have lived in Israel your most of your life, and you probably know Gideon Levy, if not personally, you probably known of his work for much of your life. Your initial thoughts on him?
Yes, I mean he's a very prominent figure in Israel. He was a many years a journalist. I don't know if you can actually ascribe that term to him, but that's what he does for a living. Um, and yeah, he used to be a regular guest on this political panel show where they just kind of it was a kind of a monkey show where everybody just yells at each other. Um, but he's been a I actually haven't heard from him for a long time because I don't go into Haaretz and read their articles anymore. So I don't think he features anywhere else nowadays, uh, apparently, except for anti-Israel platforms abroad. But I haven't followed him, so I even forgot about his existence. So thank you, Razi, for bringing him back into my life and making me watch that terrible interview. But I mean, no, he's terrible. You know, if uh, October 7 is really one of those events in history that pulls the masks off of a lot of people. And if he cannot change his views after October 7, that you just know that he's corrupt to the soul and there's no salvation to him. He's just plain evil.
Yeah, by the way, Piers Morgan is not an anti-Israel platform. It's a free speech platform that kind of listens to all sides. Alex, you were on the show for the second time, although I think it was a close call because when I asked you to talk about Gideon Levy, you weren't enthusiastic to say the least. Your initial thoughts on him before we hear from him.
So, well, Gideon Levy, what can I say? So I don't actually know him personally, but he does of course live in Ramat Aviv, which for anybody who is who knows what that means, it's a very, very well-to-do area in North Tel Aviv. And when I think of Gideon Levy, I have to admit, I think about the story of the donkeys, the donkey story. Basically, Gideon Levy penned one of the most quintessential famous hoaxes basically about a Palestinian who was supposedly humiliated and tortured by an IDF soldier and dragged on the back of a donkey. And and Gideon Levy called this the donkey procedure, right? And all of the Israelis read this, right? The editor of Mariv read this, and he says, okay, no, we're getting to the bottom of this. Nobody could find any evidence, not B'Tselem, which is a far left wing, organization that looks for abuses on Palestinians. Haaretz couldn't find anything. The Palestinian Authority had no evidence. And he has Gideon Levy would not back down, and he has an entire chapter actually based on him in Dror Ben Yemeni's book, The Central Stage for Incitements. So, highly recommend. I hate him, but I kind of also I'm drawn to see what he's going to say next.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to see what he's going to say next. Nathan thanked me for reminding him that Gideon Levy existed. Jonathan, you need to thank me for introducing you to this person because you were not even aware of his existence at all. So you're welcome.
Yeah, but Razi, Rand makes the point that it's ideas that move the world, and people like Levy are full of ideas, and they spread them on platforms, whether it be social media or podcasts or books, all over the place. And, the fact that he is in effect anti-Israel and happens to be Jewish, born in Israel, it sounds, from what I understand, it reminds me of oftentimes I'm on TV advocating for a low tax position, and they bring me on with a successful businessman who's for higher taxes. They have these in America. There's kind of real pompous, wealthy business guys who say, tax me more, I want to pay more and more. And they say, see, this is a good businessman. He wants higher taxes for the greater good. So I wonder if Gideon Levy kind of, fits that role in effect. Even this Jewish person thinks that, Israel has gone too far and they're really at fault here. So he fits that trope that probably a lot of media editors and managers want.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely, the pro-Hamas side love it when they can say, look, even Israeli journalist Gideon Levy says, so how can you, if an Israeli says it, how can you deny it?
Right.
Thank you,
it's just
Yotam.
about identity, right? It's not about ideas. It's about, oh, he's a Jew that says all these bad things about Israel. So there we go. So we already win like 10 points or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, to the point that Mike is making, asking, is Gideon Levy related to Norman Finkelstein? No, this is not genes. They did this all on their own. Like they are volitional humans, and that's why they should be judged for their choices. Thank you, Yotam, for the super chat. Yotam says Gideon is second to Ilan, is only second to Ilan Pape. Yeah, I think Ilan Pape also will get his own episode. We usually give us a few days between such characters because it's good, entertaining, and informative television, but it's not good for the soul. So speaking of not good for the soul, let's go to the first clip.
Outside world that Israel is basically ramping up for a full-fledged war with Hezbollah in Lebanon at the same time that it's still conducting a full-fledged war with Hamas in Gaza.
Absolutely. You see, the main problem is that under the excuse or under the umbrella of self-defense, which in many cases is justified, Israel thinks that it has the right to do whatever it wants. The 7th of October enabled Israel to go wild in Gaza, to cross any possible legal or moral border, and to kill 41,000 people. Why? Because of the 7th of October. After the 7th of October, we have the right to do whatever we want, and nobody will tell you, you heard the propaganda of the ambassador. Same now with Hezbollah. Hezbollah launched rockets on Israel. We have to defend itself. Until here, very well. But because we are defending ourselves, we have the right to do whatever we want. For example, the devices. For example, to kill today almost 300 people in one day. Is there a limit? I would like just to ask you one thing, Pierce, and please answer with honesty.
Yeah.
If Hezbollah would have spread those devices in Israel to soldiers, and hundreds of people would have got blind out of it, how would the world react after it? What would you say about those terrorists, about those monsters who do such things? Why, when Israel is doing, it's always justified. Whatever it does, it's always justified by self-defense.
exactly well, I would
by
say, okay,
essential
I would
All
say-
threat.
all right. So this is a trick that the pro-Palestinians always do, which is why isn't the world talking about it when all of the world is talking about it and condemning Israel for again the most precise operation ever against combatants in various areas, including civilian areas. And interestingly, he does say kind of he gives some lip service to Israel has a right to defend itself, and then he does the thing that anti-Israel people do, which is he says, well, they think they can do anything, for example, and then he goes through the examples of the most targeted operations in history. So Israel has a right to defend itself is this kind of floating abstraction, as Rand would call it, but worse than that. It's basically an abstraction that can never have any concretes because there are no instances of Israel defending itself that people like Gideon Levy would approve of. Nathan.
Yeah, no, just looking at that clip, I was like, I wish there would be someone who could actually debate him on this, because it's like it seems like it would be almost too easy. Because I mean, the thing that I would say is, yes, Israel can do whatever it wants to do because it was attacked first. So yes, the goal of self-defense justifies all the means. The goal to submit to defeat Hamas, to defeat Hezbollah, justifies any military means. So yes, Israel can do it. Like the thing that he's going against is exactly yes. What Israel can do whatever it wants in order to remove the threat and get back to peace and to actually win against their enemies. So the trick here is that he's just using the kind of moral grayness of our culture, saying no, nothing is absolute. Yes, of course you have the right to self-defense, but it's limited, right? It's limited by this altruist morality. It's limited by I don't know, some other international pressures, by whatever. What did he say? It's limited also by the international law, as if that's something that exists and it's real. Yeah, I just wish that someone could really press him on that and then just see how he reacts. And the second thing that he said, like, why can Israel do when he compares Israel and Hezbollah, says, well, what if Hezbollah did the same to Israeli soldiers? Well, Israeli soldiers did not initiate force against Hezbollah. Like, that's it. That's the answer. They did not initiate force. So, of course, if Hezbollah attacked Israeli soldiers, that would be a moral crime.
Yeah, and that's another issue I have with Alan Dershowitz's defense of Israel there, because he actually says, yes, if they did it to soldiers, it would be legal. And the other side is not arguing the legal point. They're arguing the point that they should argue, which is moral. I don't know how to argue a legal point when it comes to international law, but that's
right. It's infuriating to listen to Alan Dershowitz, because I mean, when he goes into the proportional, I don't know if you're going to go into that.
I don't know if we'll get to him. We will, by the way, at some point play a clip of Rania, because I have some things to say about her as well. Alex.
Yeah, it's for me, I really think that for Gideon Levy, this entire thing, much like Ehud Barak, it's deeply personal. Here is Gideon Levy, who is the correspondent for Judea and Samaria. He's basically the Palestinian correspondent for Haaretz magazine, and he doesn't speak Hebrew. Sorry, he doesn't speak Arabic. So here you have, right, a man who is constantly at the center of these either hoaxes, lies. He's a joke in the Israeli kind of journalistic scene. And for him, I really think that now he can no longer convince other people of his integrity, because he's basically a con artist. It's if you don't speak Arabic and you are the Palestinian correspondent for Haaretz, what inevitably ends up happening? You end up going to Ramallah, you end up having things translated to you, you interpret them however you really want to interpret them, and you write these kind of nonsensical stories that Haaretz had to keep printing retractions. And someone that I really do find incredibly inspiring, actually, is Gadi Taub. He's also a former Haaretz writer, and he basically speaks very openly about the kind of the he kind of calls it a conspiracy that one had to engage in during the time of Oslo, in order to hide from the Israeli public the reality of what Arafat was actually saying in Arabic. And he's really come out the other side, and now he's very much telling kind of the truth, kind of about that sort of, I don't want to say conspiracy, but yes, they really did conspire to hide the truth from the Israeli people. And I just kind of think that Gideon Levy, he can no longer really convince us. So now he's going out into the world and he's trying to convince other people. You can't change us from, within. So he's going to try and destroy it from without. It's personal, I think.
Yes, although I would say I think he still has, the Israeli left is still too popular, left-wing ideas, way too popular as more so than you would expect after October 7th, and that's one of the things that terrify me. Jonathan.
Well, again, this is some of my first experience of viewing this guy, but he sounds like a lot of the pro-Hamas voices here in the States. I mean, from that quote, Razi, that first kind of section there, he says, Israel is going wild, crossing any border, doing anything they want. And I'm thinking, that's what Hamas did. I mean, Hamas is the one that crossed the border. We can't even get it into the unspeakable mutilation and death that they caused on completely innocent non-combatants there. I mean, that was Hamas that did that. And Natan, you mentioned something that I remember Dr. Peikoff often said. What can they do to make this to handle this threat? Dr. Peikoff once said in one of his podcasts that the goal is to make the threat non-threatening. I'm paraphrasing there, but that includes some pretty awful war. And this is my opinion, war is horrible. So don't start one. And missing from this entire context is the fact that Israel is undertaking retaliatory force. It's not the initiation of force. Israel didn't go out looking for this fight. It was literally brought to their doorstep, all up and down. And, they are trying desperately to finish it. And of course, the Palestinians and Hamas could expedite that if they waved the white flag, returned the hostages, did something except continue to attack, hold hostages, fire rockets, missiles, and the like.
Yeah, and as I always say, I that is true of Israeli policy. I don't think it should be. I think Israel should continue this war until Hamas is no longer in existence, and the same with Hezbollah. But the fact is, if they did lay down their arms, Israel would lay down its arms, at least until next time it has to defend itself. Just a couple of quick points. Yeah, Gideon Levy reminds me. I often make this comparison of that clip that we saw during the Black Lives Matter riots in the U.S. of these guys in their apartment, and they're cheering on the Black Lives Matter rioters in the street, and then a rock is thrown and breaks one of their windows, and then they shout down to the rioters, "We're on your side, we're on your side," and then they throw another rock and break another window. That is Gideon Levy in a nutshell. And for anybody who object to what we put on the thumbnail, and by the way, that's none of the panelists are responsible for that. That is my responsibility. But yeah, in comparing somebody like that to the Jews who collaborated with the Nazis, the only caveat I would make is that Jews who collaborated with the Nazis often had a gun to their head, and their choice was collaborate with the Nazis or die. Or Gideon Levy does not have a gun to his head. This is all him, all his choice. So in that sense, the comparison is not valid because he's worse. Let's listen to some more of him.
Overdose of propaganda. First, the ambassador.
Gideon,
Acceptable.
Let me get Gideon's response to what Alan
Yeah.
just said, please.
Yeah, thank you. I really feel an overdose of propaganda. First, the ambassador, and then Ellen. You see, Israel will always stick to the fact that it is the victim. Whatever happens, Israel is the victim. 41,000 people killed in Gaza, and this is
how many of them are
proportional.
combatants?
How can
Wait a minute. How many?
Just a second.
How many of the 41,000 are civilians? How many are combatants?
I'll tell you exactly.
You haven't mentioned. Yeah, I'll tell you exactly.
I'll
Let's
tell
hear.
you. I'll tell you. No, but let me first
But don't
answer.
say 41,000.
17,000 of
What?
17,000 of them were children.
17,000
Children
are
are
combatants.
innocent.
Okay.
Always, always, always.
so let's-
if you can live in
let's
peace,
look at those
if you
figures.
can live in peace. No, let me finish now. I didn't interrupt
Yes,
you. If you
yes,
can
I
live
can
in
live in
peace
peace with
with.
that.
No, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. Let others talk. If you can live in peace with 17,000 children, you have a problem. I cannot live in peace with 17,000 children killed.
You
Cannot
missed
live with
my
it in peace.
point.
But let me finish.
You
no,
said seven.
no, Ellen.
17,000
Your turn will
combatants were
come.
killed. 17,000
No, 17,000 children.
Isn't the
I'm
point?
asking
Okay,
you.
let me interrupt here because
Let's
you,
talk
you're
about
talking
the
over each other.
combatants
Look, don't talk over each other.
Let me finish.
Here's the point I would make,
But
Gideon.
I would like.
Yeah, finish your point,
Yes,
Gideon,
I
then
would
I'm going
like
to say something.
take it. Yes.
Finish your
Let
point,
me
Gideon.
take it. Yes. I want just to raise another point because it is important. We are after 1 year in Gaza, which was a catastrophe for all parties. Israel achieved nothing in this war. Israel's position today in any parameter is much worse than before this war. You name it,
What should they have done?
security, economically,
What should they have
it's
done?
a pariah state.
Lay down their arms? What
Just
should they have done?
let me
Sing,
finish.
Sing Kumbaya with Hamas?
Now Israel, now Israel is aiming to do the very same thing in Lebanon, not learning one lesson.
them
But
stop
Israel's
firing.
okay.
Everything.
Gideon,
Just-
Gideon,
firing.
Gideon,
No,
Israel,
right.
Gideon,
Okay,
Israel's
okay. All right, we've heard more than enough. But yeah, first of all, that we criticize Israel all the time for not doing enough, but that is just factually incorrect. Israel is, Hamas is hurt. So yeah, Israel is better off security-wise than it was on October 6th, because in October 7th now from Gaza is not going to happen. It might come from the West Bank. It could come from Lebanon, because Israel isn't doing enough there militarily. But no, that is a pure lie, as is much of the other stuff he said. Nathan.
Boy, where do I even begin there? I mean, first of all, I think Alan should let him speak. Alan Dershowitz, let other people speak. Don't cut him off like an Israeli. But in all seriousness, I mean, yes, Israel is always the victim. It is. Because the thing is, he's playing the altruist card here. He renounces cause and effect. He doesn't care about justice from a rational perspective. He just looks at, well, who's the stronger? Who's stronger, between the two warring sides. And he looks at Israel and he says, well, Israel is killing a lot more people, and Israel has this mighty military. And so of course Israel can't play the victim, but it is the victim. You can be strong and the victim. If another group initiates force against you, then you're the victim. And if this other group initiates force against you for 78 years, then yes, you're the victim for 78 years. I mean, it's just as plain, as simple as that. So I mean, this whole card also of the 17,000 children, I mean, that's just collectivist. Like, I care about that one Israeli child who was murdered on October 7th. And it is, he was the one who was, the force was initiated against him. So Israel must do everything that it can do to protect its own citizens. And I feel like it's even kind of like a concession to even say, yeah, of course I feel bad for the children in Gaza, but And I mean, in a sense, I don't, because I know that this is my life. I want Israel to protect my children, and I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to feel bad about that. Like, there's just absolutely no guilt on my part. I mean, it is tragic from a human perspective, if we want to think about it that way. But all war is tragic. Even the Hezbollah terrorists who were maimed. I mean, that is, when you see those pictures, it is tragic in a sense. We don't want to see that. We love life. We don't want to engage in wars and in violence. It's just a complete and utter, waste of human beings pursuing values and achieving their goals. So, but when you go into these discussions, I don't think you need to concede on that point. And he just plays on the altruist card, and you see how Alan Dershowitz, of course, he can't answer that because he essentially holds the same premises.
Yeah, I'll disagree with you in part because first of all, I don't think it's a concession to say, that you feel bad in the sense that, as you mentioned, it's a tragedy that children die. I absolutely agree that you shouldn't feel guilty as an Israeli, because the guilt there lies with the Palestinians. But in the case of the children, it absolutely does not lie with them. It lies with their parents and with generally what their society is. So in that sense, yeah. You say 17,000 or whatever Hamas tells you, and it might be true and it might be more. That doesn't change who's responsible for that, and that's who should be condemned. Whereas Gideon Levy, of course, condemns the people who are trying to stop the killing. Alex.
Yeah, so I mean, it's Hamas start recruiting for its infantry, so to speak, brigades from the age of about 15. But it's not, I mean, I'm here in Yerushalayim, and I've seen with my own, 2 eyes, 13-year-olds, stabbing people on Givat Tachmoshet at the age of, 13. So the idea that, I think we have to even take what he's saying about the children with a kind of a big grain of salt here, because children are frequently used by terrorist organizations as soldiers because they see them as men. We see them as children. They see them as men who can do absolutely anything. And it's also not unheard of for Hamas to use women in operations as a way to kind of cleanse their family honor, right? So, these things are very, very complicated. But Gideon is basically why is he doing this? He's getting an inordinate amount of attention that he simply wouldn't get as a regular run-of-the-mill Haaretz journalist, right? I imagine as well that this is making him, pretty wealthy, right? To be going around and just kind of, oh, hi, where am I today? What is it that you want to say? What is it that you want me to say about Israel today? And it's just kind of like almost a performance at this point. It's so completely and utterly detached from reality. And actually, to your point, Razi, about the kind of the Israeli left, right? So Ben Dror Yemeni, I would definitely say he is a man of the left. And he has dedicated, chapters in his books criticizing and discrediting Gideon Levy. And even if we think about the newspaper that he writes for, Haaretz has a circulation in this country, in Israel, of 0.3%. Who on earth reads Haaretz? I mean, I simply wouldn't know where to buy it here in the capital city. It doesn't, who on earth is interested in reading it? So he is performing for anti-Semites. He is writing for anti-Semites. He's basically just the part of the media machine of Hamas and the rest of the Islamic psychopaths.
Yes, although I think he does believe it, which is what makes it. I mean, there's might be a performance aspect to it, but yeah, some people really are that evil and committed to evil, and I think he's one of those people.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
Yeah, well, just the whole kind of wailing of think of the children. I mean, not only is it's so out of context. I have to say, it reminds me of Edna Krabappel from The Simpsons, and it's so cruel only because any of the, I shouldn't say any, but all of those children are victims not of Israel, but of Hamas, but of the Palestinians. I mean, the Palestinians and Hamas use innocent people, children, schools, hospitals as weapons depots, as, training facilities, as, military headquarters. It's like all of that is Hamas's fault. And that's what I think is so funny about Gideon is, he talks about all of this as if it's metaphysically given, but all of this, there was a cause of this, and that was this attack. Rand has that quote from the objectivist ethics. I'm quoting now: the basic political principle of the objectivist ethics is that no man may initiate the use of physical force against others. And that's exactly what Hamas did. And here's Gideon saying, well, wait a minute, Israel is going too far here. It's like not even one acknowledgement of the horror that was visited on Israel and the fact that it's ongoing.
This is the whole thing of like how altruism works, because I mean, if you're just rational, right, and if you have an egoistic rational morality, then you look at cause and effect and you say, okay, they initiated force, and the moral responsibility lies on Hamas. But if you have this altruist morality, then it's all about duty, and then cause and effect doesn't really matter. It's just, well, you have a duty to these children, no matter what the cause is, who started what, it's just a duty from nowhere. And that's how they're able to play on the emotional card of people, and they just appeal to emotion, and it's hard for altruists, I think, to refute that.
So we're going to get back to Gideon Levy. I want to hear a little bit from this other panelist, Rania Khalek, because there's a few interesting things about her. We're just going to hear one clip of her from the beginning, and then we'll go back to Gideon.
Patiently. What's your response to Alan Dershowitz?
Well, Alan Dershowitz has spent his entire career justifying Israel murdering Arab children. That's when he's not busy defending pedophiles and rapists like Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein. So I'm not surprised that he's come on this program
personal
today
attacks
to defend
now.
terrorist attacks. Let me finish, Alan.
Let's stay away from the personal attacks
Alan.
and get to the merits. But you're not going to attack me personally for being a defense lawyer. I defend Arabs. I defend Muslims. I have defended communists. I've defended Nazis. I'm a defense lawyer. And please stop making personal attacks on me and get to the merits if you have anything to say on the merits. So far, you said nothing on the merits. It's just been a personal attack, which you ought to be ashamed of.
All right. I'm not ashamed of saying what I just said. It's objectively true. That said, you did just justify what Leon Panetta, the former CIA director, called an act of terrorism, Israel blowing up cellular devices. And we should all be concerned with that standard Israel set. Because by your logic, Alan, does that make it okay to blow up the cellular devices of Israeli soldiers who are off duty, far from any battlefield, going about their daily lives with their kids in grocery stores, in hospitals? That is what Israel did to Lebanon last week.
That would be legal.
Because we know that would be called a terrorist
attack. That would be legal under the law.
And then let me just say, I am very upset right now. I am very upset right now because Israel has just murdered 300 of my fellow countrymen in Lebanon in an indiscriminate carpet bombing campaign based on lies. I have people calling me, telling me the horrors they're experiencing at this very moment under Israeli bombardment.
Stop firing rockets. Stop firing rockets and it will end. That's all. Just stop firing at Israeli communities and civilians and it will end. It's all Hezbollah's fault.
I mean, Rania, let me ask you. Hang on. Let me ask.
Thousands of
let me ask a question.
Fired.
Rania, let me ask you a question. You don't dispute, presumably, that Hezbollah has spent the last year firing rockets into Israel, do you? You don't dispute that.
Of course she disputes it. Of course she disputes it.
Well, let me ask you.
The truth from falsehood.
Let me ask you directly.
I came on here to talk about Lebanon. If Alan's going to continue to interrupt me and not let me speak,
I just asked you a question.
Would you like me to answer your question, or are we going to let Alan talk?
No, I've asked you a question. You respond to me.
On October 8th, Hezbollah started firing at Israel in solidarity with Palestinians. And since then, we've heard from Hezbollah repeatedly say they will stop firing when Israel stops its aggression on Gaza. Israel has repeatedly refused to stop its aggression on Gaza, and things have escalated in the north. And I'll also say that, and this is according to the BBC, 80% of the cross-border attacks have actually gone from Israel to Lebanon. This is a two-way fight.
I think we've heard enough, although there's basically everything she says here and keeps saying probably deserves comment. But before we get to anything that she actually said, I want to talk about, symbols and what they mean. So years ago here in London, I lived in an apartment, and there's new neighbors moved across the hall. And a couple of days later, I opened the door to my apartment on my way out, and I see they put a symbol. The first thing I see is a swastika on their door. Now it took me a second to realize, okay, this is used as a Hindu symbol, which was before the Nazis used it. So I understood it didn't mean we want to exterminate all Jews, as much as I didn't like seeing that symbol. But I know, when Nazis use it, I know what they mean. So this woman has a necklace with a map of Israel. And what she means by that is not that she's a supporter of Israel, as you can hear from her talk, from what she says when she talks. It means that she wants the state of Israel wiped off the map and replaced with some sort of jihadi entity, which, by the way, is always fascinating when we talk about somebody like Gideon Levy, an Israeli who is anti-Israel, and we see somebody who left Lebanon, who has the Freedom Tower, behind her in that image, and talks about my fellow countrymen while supporting Hezbollah, showing her hair, showing a little bit of cleavage there, the kind of stuff that would get her killed in the kind of country that, if Hezbollah wins, would end up replacing Israel. It's there's a lot before she even opens her mouth that shows what a despicable person she is, and then of course she talks. Natan.
Yes, no, it's good that you pointed that out, because I wanted to say something about that. I mean, she's talking about, like she's upset about her Lebanese people, but she's out there, all that she cares about is the destruction of Israel. You just see that from her necklace, like you said. I mean, I don't know. I would describe her as a self-entitled savage. That's how I would describe her. And I think she is a unique product of the West right now. She's not, I don't think she's you can say, she's a Lebanese. Like, she seems like she's completely Western, in the sense, not like Western, Greece Western, but of the current present climate in the West. She's kind of probably a product of the academia, universities in the US. So it's just, I mean, she would not be able to speak like this with the kind of fake conviction that she has, had she lived in a rational society and people would put her in her place, and just to demonstrate how evil she is. I don't know if I mean, do you want to comment on anything particular that she said? Because I think it's just a bunch of nonsense.
Well, I have some stuff to say, but I'm gonna go to the others and see what they have to say, and maybe I'll add something to it. Alex.
Yeah, it's really almost as if Rania is talking about some kind of, very metaphysical, metaphorical rockets, just firing some metaphysical rockets in solidarity, like these rockets are not real. Like, these are not missiles that are aimed at human beings with an attempt to kill them, right? These rockets have killed people. It's completely and utterly disgusting. It's almost as if saying, I really wanted to show solidarity with the victims of October 7th, so I murdered some kittens. I just felt that that's how I wanted to show my solidarity. I mean, what is the relation that she's talking about? And they were never firing in solidarity, right? Listen to what they say. Listen to Hezbollah themselves, right? They, as I kind of mentioned on the last broadcast that I was on, what the Shiites actually think about the Palestinians, right? That they're, kind of, desert animal barbarians, that they're like a lower life form than them. And this idea that Hezbollah have joined in solidarity, if anything, no, they don't want for their name to be too much out of the press. There's a very big political situation going on, October 7th, and they don't want to lose out on the adulation, on the fame, on the recruitment opportunity for their people. So they have to join in. That's the only reason why. I mean, why does Piers do this? I mean, why does Piers bring on the most unintelligent, irrational person that he can find and pass this off as is it just the freak show element?
I mean, we were talking a couple of days ago, and you compared him to Jerry Springer, and in that sense, I think that's kind of although I think morally he's worse than Jerry Springer, but yeah, I think the reasons are probably similar.
And Gideon Levy is like another Cenk Unger. He's just like another version of that. And Alex, I think you said in effect, or maybe it was Netanyahu playing a role in effect. And I think I say that. And they would defend Hamas no matter what happened. I mean, that's kind of what they're there to do, apart from reason, apart from reality. And it's I think it makes for great TV, but it's pretty a weak sauce when it comes to actually convicting or making a moral conviction about ethics and what's right.
I just quickly want to say one of our biggest fans among the trolls, somebody who is here every day, says this video is being used in other channels to show how Alan was humiliated. Okay, I don't think he did that well. Again, he didn't do as bad as some other people on Pierce's show, but Pierce, I was saying this in our production meeting that I'm a wrestling fan, and I remember wrestling in the 90s where they had the televised shows, and then they had the pay-per-views, which were the big shows that they wanted people to pay to watch. So in the televised shows, you'd have the big star doing his big entrance, the Bret Hart or the Undertaker or Shawn Michaels, one of those, and they would face an opponent who was waiting in the ring, and you would know the result. The result is the big star wins. The person in the ring was what was called a jobber, somebody who does the job in the wrestling lingo is loses the match. And the point was to make the big star look good, and then in the pay-per-view they would face another big star, and you don't know who's going to win that. Here, basically, Piers Morgan has pro-Hamas people against jobbers, and that's what Alan Dershowitz is. He is one of the again, he fought back a bit more, but he fought back again on a legal basis, not on a moral basis. He said, yeah, if Hamas just targeted exploded pagers of IDF soldiers, that would be okay. That's an amazing statement by somebody who thinks Israel is the right side in this. No, Hamas's very existence or Hezbollah's very existence is illegitimate. So anything they do is illegitimate except lay down their arms and change their mind.
I'll just say, I mean, I think the technique of those kind of cheap personal shots and then you kind of keep going, I think it's pretty just infantile. And if you want to see a good debate, someone actually who has a mastery of ideas, check out the 1984 debate with Dr. Peikoff, Socialism versus Capitalism. And that's how you should debate. That's how you should make an argument. And this woman is just, she's kind of hard on the ears and hard on the brain as well.
Yeah, as is Gideon Levy. So let's watch a bit more of him.
So Gideon, I mean, quite extraordinary spectacle there. I've got to say, as a journalist, I feel extremely uncomfortable about what has happened here. It's the kind of stuff you expect from a banana republic, isn't it?
It's one of those moments, both as a journalist and as an Israeli, that I feel ashamed to see soldiers coming to any kind of media organization and to shut it down with guns in a democracy. Are you serious? But it's much deeper than this, because it starts there and it will get much farther. Yesterday, Al Jazeera, tomorrow, Haaretz. Trust those people who stand behind it. Trust this government. Trust those Israelis who are so indifferent to what's happening. Al Jazeera is the only media outlet which is present in Gaza. And that's the crime of Al Jazeera, because they are only one who are there. And they are the only one who tell the full truth about the West Bank. And so many times we, Israeli journalists, need Al Jazeera. It was just a few weeks ago when they were the first one to expose the terrible fact that Israel is sending Palestinians with handicapped to the tunnels with cameras. Later on, Haaretz did a big story about it. Israel does not want those scenes to be seen.
Okay, let me.
Therefore, it closes.
Okay, I just
Right.
we're running out of time.
Okay, we don't need to see, and we will put the link in the chat for people who do want to see, but we don't need to see Dershowitz's response. But Dershowitz, sides with Gideon Levy on this and says that Israel is wrong in banning Al Jazeera, and in his sort of weak criticism of Al Jazeera, he makes the point, or he says that they are funded by Qatar, which is really not the best way to put it. It's not that they are funded by Qatar. I can say that, we're funded, who in the chat here is a member. Davey Boy. We're funded by Davey Boy, the Ayn Rand Center UK. He is a YouTube member. If Davey Boy says to me tomorrow, look, I've changed my mind, I think Israel is committing genocide, it's an apartheid state, I'm not going to continue to fund ARCUK if you don't change your tune to agree with that. I'm able to say, well, you know what, okay, we'll part ways, or you know what, you convinced me, we're going to go with this. Those options are open to me. Al Jazeera does not have options open to it. It is not just funded by Qatar. It is owned and run by the Qatari dictatorship. And there are media outlets out there who I despise, who say things that are similar to Al Jazeera, but who are not government funded, and that's a different story. But Al Jazeera is not the Guardian. Al Jazeera is Der Stürmer. It's a government propaganda outlet, and that's it should not be allowed in Israel. Nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But I just want to say about the panel, if you could kind of encapsulate, I mean, it's sort of like an encapsulation of like the different degrees of altruism. So you have Alan Dershowitz, who says, well, Israel needs to sacrifice itself a little bit. And then you have Gideon Levy, Israel needs to sacrifice itself until just the lowest point of survival. And from there, that's it. That's when they will have the right to self-defense. And then they bring the other, what's her name? The Arab woman. I don't remember her name. She's like the opposite side of the altruist coin. She says like, no, you just need to sacrifice everything you have for me, so I can live off of your deceased corpse. So I mean, it's a freak show of like the worst thing that you can watch. And I think Piers Morgan he should be condemned. Like, I think he's just an awful person, and not necessarily because he brings these awful people on. I think you can have a debate with even people who have really bad ideas, but I think it is the position, the stance that he takes, and the way that he carries these, the way that he moderates these debates, that is just really horrible. And it just shows how he's really a kind of an amoralist, unprincipled, just really evil person. And I know I called everybody evil this show, but it just happens that they are.
And yeah, one of the things we didn't get to was Piers Morgan talking about proportionality and how that's what he cares about, and he doesn't know what the right proportions are. And then Alan Dershowitz agrees with him and explains how what Israel is doing is the correct numbers. That's a very pathetic attempt at.
And I have to say, like where he says, there's a proportionality of 1 to 4. That's just so arbitrary. Like, that's just completely insane and irrational.
Yeah, Alex.
Wow. Yeah, it's really, really difficult to even know particularly where to begin with that. So first of all, I think this is also really coming down to even Alan's maybe Western ignorance. People have been exposed to Al Jazeera in English, and they believe that is at its core what Al Jazeera actually is. Watch Al Jazeera in Arabic for a while. Listen to the kind of things they're saying. And I know that we shouldn't use these countries as examples, but Al Jazeera is banned in most of the Arab world because, it's banned certainly in Saudi Arabia. It's banned in Jordan, to the best of my knowledge. It's banned in Iraq. Obviously, these are not places that we look to for kind of, freedoms. But the reason is because they say this is trying to radicalize our population, right? To radicalize them to go out there and to commit violence or to, to do terrible things, right? So, and not only that, but Al Jazeera was accused of some very, very serious things at the very beginning of the war, like relaying information to the enemy, revealing IDF positions, telegraphing IDF positions, right? So it's absolutely legitimate. It's not as if they are having a radio station where they're just doing some, truth telling. I don't know if you remember, there was a radio station, The Voice of Peace, right? That was, yeah. So it's not as if they're doing that, all right? It's more like they are, standing at the side of the road with a microphone, shouting, violence, violence, come here and loot this shop, and there's a woman, why don't we just go there? And I'm so pleased. And by the way, to close Al Jazeera, it wasn't as if the military just kind of clicked their fingers and went in and did it. There was a court procedure. The Supreme Court of Israel decided to extend, their banning because they view them as part of the terrorist entity. And so and Alan Dershowitz as well. I mean, just kind of chiming in and saying it's sure, it's really, it's not a great thing. Why? America banned RT, right? So of course you're telegraphing violent ideas during a time of war and exposing positions of the IDF. You're over, you're toast. You're not covered by the sort of regular legitimacies that a press organization has anymore.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, Britain also, I believe, banned RT, and for exactly the same reason. And by the way, this was the Supreme Court in Israel, not exactly well known for being a right-wing organization. And I believe this is a 45-day order, right? So this is how things happen in a country that has some respect for the rule of law. If it was on the other side, they would just go in probably and kill everybody.
I just want to also chime in and just say that, Razi, but there is actually I think not Al-Manar, I think it is Al-Mana something. They are basically Hezbollah's news organization, and Israel reinstated their press credentials, right, by a Supreme Court order. So let's not, let's not pretend exactly that this is some kind of, fascist state all of a sudden because we told Al Jazeera, here's the door.
Yeah, and by the way, that's terrible. They shouldn't reinstate the press.
No, I agree completely.
By the way, I have to respond. Davy Boy says Pierce should interview Chaim Ben Pesach. I interviewed Chaim Ben Pesach on my Hebrew podcast, and I'm not a fan. That guy wants maybe to defeat Islamic terrorists, but then he wants to turn Israel into a kind of Jewish Iran. That is not the kind of person that I would advocate for. But I would recommend Hebrew speakers go watch my on my Hebrew podcast, my interview with Chaim Ben Pesach. I think I treated him justly. Jonathan.
Well, just acknowledging all of our supporters and super chatters, Razi. Hours of original objectivist programming focused not only just on the situation in Israel, but globally, and spreading these ideas and understanding these ideas. And you and Daniel and your team work so hard. So we just thank all the chatters and the subscribers, whether it's even 10 or 15 pounds a month. That's what's helping keep us on the air. So we appreciate that. And we ask you to step up now if you've never donated, even if it's 5 or 10 pounds. That goes a huge way into helping us continue this programming day after day.
I completely agree. Davy Boy says about Chaim Ben Pesach, he's a bit eccentric. He's a bit more than that. His ideas are my problem with him. Nathan, parting thoughts, and where can people find more from you?
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment about Al Jazeera. So I don't have a firm opinion about this. Like, I don't know how, like, if there was a Nazi, let's say, propaganda network, I don't know if a country should ban that, but in a time of war, I think that's different, because then like the enemy is using that as a tool of propaganda during war, and I think that just completely changes the picture. So, but otherwise, I mean, you could make arguments from either side. So, and I didn't think about that, so I don't have a firm opinion. So other than that, where can people find me? On Twitter, my handle is the Enlightened Examiner. I have a Substack, Enlightened Examiner, so you can find me there.
Alex, parting thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave everybody today just with a recommendation, actually, to watch Gary Taub's interview that he gave with I think it was Imtil Tso. He did give it in English, and it really is talking about his political journey from being a Haaretz journalist all the way kind of to being really, probably, I would say, the closest thing Israel has to an objectivist intellectual, although he would not describe himself as that. He just describes himself as a kind of a right-wing intellectual. I really would recommend listening to it, and hopefully I'm actually going to be maybe interviewing Gary sometime in the very near future. And thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks. And Jonathan, parting thoughts, and where can people find you?
Sure. Well, one of my books is called A New Textbook of Americanism. Has published some published work from Ayn Rand, all about the nature of what America is and why the world needs it more than ever. It's at Amazon, A New Textbook of Americanism.
I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. To the people in the chat giving us compliments for this show, thank you very much. To the people in the chat who are trolls, thank you for your engagement. It does help with the algorithm. More people get to see this content because of you, and the day that your views take their rightful place on the ash heap of history is coming closer, thanks to you. So thanks, everybody. Thanks to my co-panelists. We'll be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show.
Thank you.